This is Gemara Sanhedrin Daf Samoch Hey, and we're holding on the very top of Samoch Hey Amar Aleph as we begin a new Mishnah. The learning should be an incredible zchos rafua shlima for Tinoik ben Miriam Ahuva b'siyata d'shmaya. The incredible koyach ha'torah should bring an ultimate, complete rafua shlima. Says the Mishnah, continuing to discuss different avodah zaras, or I should say more particularly, different misais bezdin that are chayiv skila. As we're in the middle of the perek of arba misais bezdin, discussing the different misais of bezdin, and now we're within skila. So says the Mishnah, Bal Oiv, one who does this avodah zara of Oiv, Zepitoim Amadaber mi Shech. This is pitoim, which means an act of speaking, an act of kisha from his armpit. V'yidaini, another type of avodah zara, which is what Amadaber bebev, one who speaks through his mouth. Hare'elu biskila. These are both chayiv skila. V'hanishal bahem be'azhara. And one who asks of them is chayiv e'azara, a lav. So we have Baal Oivi Adaini, avodah zaras that are discussed in the Torah, different forms of kishiv. Says the Mishnah, are chayiv skila, and if you're nishal them, you inquire of them, which we'll see exactly what that means. Meaning you ask this avodah zara to give you future, to tell the future, as Rashi quotes, we saw in the Navi of Shmuel, then it's an Isser Lav. Says the Gemara, Ma'ishina, what is the reason Hacha over here in our Mishnah, the Katani Ba'alaiv Yadaini? Oh, Ma'ishina Gabi Kris is Katani Ba'alaiv Vishiyare Lidiani. What's the reason our Mishnah they put both of them together, and why when it comes to Kares, it only says Oiv and leaves out Yadaini? Says the Gemara. Rav Yochanan Amar teaches Rav Yochanan Hayulu Shneim Belav Echad Nemru. Teaches Rav Yochanan the Mishnah and Krisa says only one of them, because they're one Isser Lav, one negative commandment, and therefore there's one Chatos. Therefore, what? Again, Belav Echad Nemru. Rish Lakish Amar Yedaini Lifi She'ein Boi Ma'isa. Says Rish Lakish, no, you know why Yedaini is left out? Because it's not called a Maisa, and therefore, again, Yadaini being Medaber Bepiv, because it's not called a Maisa, says Rish Lakish, therefore, there's no Chiyav Chatos. Ask the Gemara, but why is Oiv included? Says the Gemara, Mishad the Pasuk Meikra, because that's what the Pasuk begins with. Rish Lakish Maitem Lo Amar Krav Yechanan Amar Rab Haba Chalukin Hein Misa. The reason is Ivan and Yaidi are separated with regarding the Misa, and therefore they're separate with regarding the Chatos. V'Rav Yochanan Chaluka Delav Shema Chaluka to Misa La Yishma Chaluka. Explains the Gemara according to Rav Yochanan, that's where the differentiation will lie. Rav Yochanan Ma'itayim Lamar Karish Lakish continues the game of Gemara ping pong, figuring out what each sheet holds of the next. Amr Lacham Asnisan de Krisos. Says Rav Yochanan, the Mishnah of Krisos is Rabbi Akiva, he who holds famously Loi Be'inan Maisa. There's a chi of carbon even if there is no physical Maisa that is done. V'Reish Lakish, says the Gemara. Nehid lo by Rav Akiva Maisa. But very Maisa Rabba, Maisa Zuta, and therefore Yadaini doesn't have any action at all, and that's what Rish Lakish says the Chilik. So continues the Gemara. Wait, Megadev, you're now bringing up an idea that a form of avodah zara without a Maisa, without an action, is a lower level. Says Mar, wait, 1 second. We're talking about the Chiyah Misais, right? Megadev, one who's blasphemies, one who is Mavarich HaKadosh Baruch Hu, my Maisa Yika. There's no Maisa, and Rav Akiva holds there indeed is a Chiyah of Chatos. Answers the Gemara, Akima Svasav, have a Maisa, the curving of the lips is a Maisa. Says the Gemara, Bal Oiv, my Maisa Ika. Says the Gemara, bending your arm in a certain way that creates these sounds, that is called a maisa. Continues the Gemara, once we realize the level of maisa, va'afilu rabbanim, we're smacking the Amma, the first one line is va'afilu, even according to the rabbanim who argue on Rabbi Kiva, va'atanya, ino chayiv, al davar sheyish by maisa. There's no chiyav chatas unless for something that involves a ma'isa kikoin. For example, zibuach, slaughtering, kitur, burning, v'nisoch, and pouring a libation, v'shtach havaya, or bowing down to an idol. V'amar ish lakish man ta'ana ishtach havaya, Rabbi Akiva yitamar loy be'inan, ma'isa. That is shitas Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, no. Avilu teimar rabbanon. Kfifas kaimas rabbanon avi ma'isa, bending down is considered a maisa. So concludes the Gemara that wait, hashta l'reish lakish kfifas kaimas l'rabbanon lavi maisa. If Reish Lakish holds bending down the body, hishtach havoya is not called a maisa. Hakasha zeraisa of the Baal Oiv have a maisa. So ask the Gemara, how could Reish Lakish hold that doing what? The bending the arm is yes going to be called a maisa. Responds the Gemara, Ki kamer Reish Lakish nami l'Rabbi Akiva. You're right. Reish Lakish is indeed going within Rabbi Akiva of l'Rabbanan. Loi, Iachi asked the Gemara, Yatsa megadev bal oiv mi ba'ilei. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah should say the Chacham excluded megadev and bal oiv. Both of them are excluded. Says the Gemara, Ella Amar Ula Nut Pshat b'mekater l'sheid. Says Ula, when we talk about this avodah zarah of oiv, it's a different avodah zarah. It means that incense is being burned to a demon, to a shade. Says Rava, wait, that's full-fledged idolatry. And that's a different part of the Mishnah. Again, within that Mishnah increases different chiyuvim of carbon. Says the Gemara, mikater l'shade is a form of idol worship. Elamarava b'mikater l'chaver. Says Rava, the Mishnah is referring to one who burns ketayres to bring up demons, to bring up shadim, and that's not going to be proper avodah zarah. Amalei Abaye, wait. Hamekad l'chaver. Someone who does that, chayver chaveru. It's not so bad. He's just conjuring up things, and he does shigem malchus. Says the pasuk. So why are you telling me that this is included in this avodah zarah of oiv? Answers Gemara, indeed. V'atayra. Amra chayver zebiskil. You're right. It's something which should be a lower level, but the Torah is upgrading it, that if someone does this act intentionally b'mezid, then indeed there will be a chiyuv skila. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabbana, let's delve a little bit deeper into what this chayver chaver, as the pasuk in Devarim teaches us, the one who conjures up these different images. Says the Gemara, Echad chayver gadol ve'echad chayver katan. Whether one conjures up a large image, a smaller image, and va'afilu nechashim va'akravim. Amar Abaye Elkach, 5 lines in the bottom. Hayman did samid zibura ve'akraba. One who joins a bee with a scorpion with incantations. Afal gav dekam echavein, even though he has intent to deloy lasku, that it shouldn't cause harm. Aser, it's still going to be an iser. Says the Gemara, Vireb Yochanan Maishina Tekfivas Kaimasler Rabban Ave Maisa Kimas Fasav Lavi Maisa Marava Shani Megad Vayol Vyashnai Bilav. Says the Gemara, that's going to be the chilik. And again, just to go back for one moment, when the Gemara said, Abaye says, Hilkach son who summoned Zibura V'akrava is usher, the reason is if we're within this shita, that chayver chava that bring up incantations is included in the iser. So it'll even be if someone makes these different species, different insects to combine. But again, wrapping up this amid of Rav Yechla Maisha the Kviz Kamosar Rabban Avi Maisa Kimus Vatz Lavi Maisa. What's the chilik? That moving the mouth is not a ma'isa, but bending is yes. Amarav sheni megadef hoyel v'yeshnei believe. Megadef is different. Why? Because megadef, someone who's mekalim b'varach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is something that is be'etzem in the heart. asks the Gemara as we turn over to Samachei Amid Beis Masif Rav Zira. Asks Rav Zira the following: Yotzu Eidim Zaymim. Says the Mishnah increases Eidim Zaymim are included Shem Ben Ma'is. They don't have a Ma'is. Ramaya L'Snei Believe. Says the Gemara, what is the reason why Eidim Zaymim is not called having a Ma'isa? It's not in their heart, but their mouth. And if the only reason a mouth is not a Ma'isa when it's B'davka Believe, like Megadev, Eidim Zaymim is not believe. It's what the words that you said. So it should be called having a Ma'isa. Amarav Shani Eidim Zaymim Ha'ol V'yashlai B'kol. The reason is because it's using a voice. And using one's voice is not called an action. So this is a fine nuance that communication is going to be different than an act of blasphemy. And the reason is it will not be the difference when it comes to Megadev Yisrael believe. Here's not believe because it's just giving over words. Again, the fine nuance between Yeshta B'Kolena B'Kol is not so simple. Says the Gemara, B'Kol Rav Yechon Ma'isa is sounding the voice not a Ma'isa. V'itmar Chasma B'Kol V'Nigo B'Kol Rav Yechon Mercha Yevrish Shema Potter. Someone uses his call to do something. He uses his call to muzzle an animal and make him not eat. He uses his call to make the animal walk somewhere. Says Rabbi Yochanan, you're chayiv. So what are you talking about? It's called a ma'isa. Explains the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan, I'm chayiv. Why can't I speak about ma'isa? Shalach shema tar gives the loy ma'isa. Elam arava new tar shanidim zayim ahayil v'yashnan b're'iyah. Since edim zayim is something which is in their act of viewing, in the re'iyah shabai, that the etzem edim zayim is not telling you what they said, but what they saw. That's the reason why it's going to be in a different category. And from there, we're going to continue 10 lines down. The first one line is Tanu Rabban. Baal oiv zamadaber bein abrakim ubein atzile yadav. Says, you know what oiv is? Explains the Raisa. You speak from within the joints or from the armpit. What's the oini zamaniach etzem yodua bepiv? You put a certain bone of the yodua. This is a certain animal in his mouth. V'umedaber elav, and it talks on its own. So Meisvei asks the Gemara, "Vayikayv me'aretz koylecha." Says the pasuk, the voice should be like that of oiv ma'ilhav. Timishtai kuorchei. Sounds like the shade, this oiv, this spirit talking naturally from the grave. Says Gemara, this all of Yaseb ben Abrakim means it comes out from between his joints. Mishtai, some sort of incantation that causes his joints and whatnot to talk. Tashem avatem yishel shol. God saw. I saw an angel, a spirit coming from the ground. My love, the mishtaiki orcha. Sounds like the angel talks in the normal way. It says, "Like the Yasab ben Abrakim again, talking between the joints of mishtai." That's where it's going to speak. Tanu Rabbanan, we're back in the middle of the medium-sized lines. First line is Tanu Rabban. Oiv is whether one raises the spirit onto his zechurai, onto his zachrus, onto his aver, causes the spirit to land on his aver, or he consults with the skull. Ma bein zelezeh. Ma'alab is chayra in oila kedarka. That's not normal. Vein oila b'Shabbos. Nishabagogol is oila kedarka and oila b'Shabbos. It can happen on Shabbos. Oila, says the Gemara. Lecha solik. What do you mean? Where does it come from? Hakame monach. It's lying on the ground. Sounds like there's a spirit there that you just raise up, says the Gemara. Ela ima oine kedarkai ve'oine b'Shabbos. It responds naturally. It doesn't actually go on the joints, and it can be done on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, wait, vav she'elazu shal Turnus Rufus. Turnus Rufus asked, Eligas Rabbi Akiva, Amru la yoma yoim miyai mayim. Well, it's different than other days. How is Shabbos different? Amru la ma gever miguvrin. How is this man yourself than the other men? So Amr Lei, Turnus Rufus responded, Demare tzvi. My master desires it. That's why I am different, that the Caesar has given me this kayach. So says Rabbi Akiva, Shabbos Nami. Shabbos is well the same that what? Demare tzvi, the master desires it. Amr Lei. So Turnus Rufus turns around to Rabbi Akiva and says, this is what I meant to say. Mi Yemar, didn't you Shabbata? Who says today is Shabbos? Maybe you got the wrong day. So Amr Loi responds, Rabbi Akiva, the river of Sabbatin will prove it. Why? Because every day it flows, and today it doesn't. Those who practice Oiv will show that today the spirit will not ascend. Kivro shel aviv yoichiach. The kever of your father proves it. Shemayla ashan b'Shabbos, different acts that wouldn't happen on Shabbos. Amar Lai says to Nesrufis, Biziyasai, Biyashtai, Vikilkaltai. You disgraced my father, you embarrassed him, you insulted him. And here we're going to stop and we're going to continue within the practices of Oiv in the next year. Amirza Hashem.